Hey, deserving listeners, Love is Blind, The Reunion, Season 8. Let's check it out.
To know if he was saying the same things to both of us. And to our conclusion, he was. And I wanted to push for honesty, not for me, but for you. And I'm sorry that that was really messy, and I'm sorry I spoke for you. But yeah, I did feel a little manipulated.
She is kind of saying, I was doing it for you, Meg. I was doing it on your behalf. That is possible, but not going to go over well, right? And it also didn't look that way to me. It looked more of Madison was trying to figure out for herself, is this guy still an option for me? I'm into him, but I'm getting some clues that he's not from him, but from outside of him. So I'm going to clarify that. Yeah, because if she was really in it to try to help Meg, I would hope, I guess, that she would go to Meg, or at the very least, after that first putting the screws to him and he commits, that she would say, that she would immediately go to Meg and say, like, so this is what I'm getting, and I'm into him, but from you, it seems like he's more into you, but he just said this, so I don't want to get into anything, but do you know what's going on here? You know, something like work with Meg. And I think it's totally fine that Madison was self-interested, as everyone should be in that scenario, at least to some extent. And but she's claiming that she was looking out for Meg. And maybe she was, because the way she communicated to Mason lent itself to being misunderstood. And so it's possible that she just isn't very effective at being clear. Like, she could have a lot of defenses and barriers. As she would say, she's more in the avoidant and really attached. And for those individuals, they can often be more in their head and not actually inform people like what's going on with them.
I really appreciate that you think I am smart enough to manipulate someone. I think it's pretty obvious I could never do that.
I didn't say you're a manipulative.
So, consistent with Mason's way, he's not the most, he's not a wordsmith, let's just put it that way. And then she says, I didn't say you're a manipulative person. Okay, so let's see where this goes.
Person, I'm just saying that felt manipulative to me. In that moment, it didn't feel right. I knew you had a good connection with Meg. I knew our connection was not on the same level. And I was giving you the out. I was giving you the runway to say, yeah, actually, I have a better connection with someone.
Okay, this is really in line with what my second pass-through actually was my hypothesis. It makes it so that you have a comedy of errors. You have people that are trying to manage this very strange situation in the pods, and they have their own emotions. There's a lot at stake, right? And there's also that question as to whether or not you're explicit in the pods about your other connections. Do you bring that up? You know, I talked about that in my second pass through too, because there's a chance that for Mason, if he felt free to talk about it, he would have talked with Madison about Meg. But I think him in particular, but I also just think it was the culture of the guys' lounge that they're just like, we're dating, and we're acknowledging to each other that we're dating multiple people, but we're not talking about who we're dating. None of us are going to talk about who we're dating and who we're connecting with or anything like that. We're just going to keep that out of it so that there's no anger or misunderstanding or competition or something. You know, it relieves everyone. And I think it actually kind of did help compared to other, and even compared, you know, you could argue that if the women's side, which I don't blame them for disclosing, particularly later in the week, who they were dating and who they were connecting with, but it could be argued that for Madison, if she never knew about Meg coming out, it could have been a very different experience. You know, it could have just happened organically, where Madison just decided that she just wanted to be with Alex. You know what I mean? Anyway, but then she said something earlier of, I didn't call you a manipulative person. I'm just saying it felt manipulative to me, which is a good clarification if that's what she said. And that is very different. And I talk about that sometimes in these reaction videos, that, for example, to call someone a narcissist, right, that is different than saying it felt like you didn't care about my feelings. that's very different. You cannot debate that she felt like it was a manipulating situation. No one can debate that. People can disclose how it felt to them, the way they interpreted it. No one can argue with that. But they can absolutely argue with calling someone a narcissist or calling someone a manipulator, right? Because these other individuals, one, they have a stake in the game to defend themselves. Plus, it's a very subjective thing, and they know themselves better than you would know them and other people, So she's clarifying that. But yeah, I still wouldn't have recommended that she say manipulative.
You're a manipulative person. I'm just saying that felt manipulative to me. In that moment, it didn't feel right. I knew you had a good connection with Meg. I knew our connection was not on the same level. And I was giving you the out. I was giving you the runway to say, yeah, actually, I have a better connection with someone, and you didn't take it. You committed to me.
Yeah, it just explains the whole thing. It doesn't mean that it was wise, and it doesn't mean that it was executed well. But I think the way that Madison and Mason came together, the way that they communicated, and again, without the nonverbals, I think any other configuration, if Madison, for whatever reason, was doing this with Alex, I think Alex, the way that he communicates, I think it would have turned out completely differently. I think there's, given the way that Mason communicates and his sort of reactivity, I think it just was completely set up for the whole situation to fail, which it clearly did, right?
Madison, the only reason I committed to you was because I felt pressured to do so.
I didn't force you to say anything, Mason.
I didn't say.
Yeah, okay. Well, and that's the way it looked. But it's harder to get behind what Mason say. Yeah, so the only reason why I was this close to asking you to marry me is because I felt like you were pressuring me to what? Now, I think that it's quite possible that for him, he was really having a hard time navigating dating two different people, and I think he might operate to some extent from a place of shame and guilt or something. And if he were to really dig down deep when he felt that Madison was putting the screws to him, which is completely viable. I mean, my first pass through, I was like, she's putting the screws to him. But I don't think that was, we're hearing that's not what was in her heart. And even without hearing this, it didn't look that way to me on the second pass through. So I think if he were to dig down deep and actually not let influences push him in a direction, he would have told Madison, look, you're definite. I really do not know which one between you and Meg that I want to, be with ultimately, if either of you would have me. But all I know is I want to continue dating both of you and moving down the road. And I have really strong feelings for you, if you want me to be honest. And I have really strong feelings for Meg too, but you're very different people. I think if he were to be honest, that it would be something like that. But because of shame or guilt or the context, or he has a tendency to exaggerate or even drum up feelings that result in him being quote unquote honest as he's saying, I'm committing to you, but he's not actually fully on board with that. It did kind of look that way to me. And so, like I said, comedy of error, if you can say one thing for sure, is that Mason, even himself, said that he was not being upfront, maybe even lying. I guess you could extend it to being manipulative. But, in that date when she dumped him, he said that night he regretted having said that. Why would you say it if you weren't sure, right? Why would you, even if she was being pressuring, why would you say that? That's something to look at, and that's a concrete thing that you can identify in all of this mess that you can legitimately sharply criticize. And he should admit that yes, it wasn't good that I was getting pressure, and yes, I was trying to respond to that in my way, but I instantly regretted it later that night, and that wasn't okay for me to do. I wasn't ready to do that. I liked you, but I was too desperate, or I was too worried to lose you, or I wanted to please you. I thought you were angry at me, and that's not okay for me to have done.
Madison, the only reason I committed to you was because I felt pressured to do so.
I didn't force you to say anything, Mason.
I didn't say forced, I said pressured. You know, I was in there and I just opened my heart to you the whole time and thought I was in a real relationship with someone who had real feelings for me. And watching
That's
it
true.
back, I just got treated like crap the whole time.
Yeah, that's the way it looked to me the first time. You could argue even with the thing that she's saying, which is in line with my interpretation or my hypothesis on the second, watch, that she was not careful enough. She wasn't mindful enough of how it could be perceived by him, how cold it could come across, and how cold it could come across upon him watching it, right? And he is on the heels of having watched it, and it would be even more hurtful. His memory is that it was hard, but to watch the nonverbals that were in the edit, and it looked real. It didn't look manipulated, but we don't know. But for him to see her facial expression and kind of to see the big picture of her relationship with Alex and all that stuff, like it would confirm that she, or at least it would, lend itself to that interpretation that even I had, the first time I was watching. And he would be really hurt and really angry. And you could see Meg seems to be on Mason's side, and so you could imagine that Meg might have seen that as well. I feel bad for Madison because I don't know if she has any friends on this issue.
This
And
is really
it sucks
interesting.
to watch back.
Because when I saw you at the bar a couple months ago, you apologized to me for treating me like that.
Well, I'm guessing because he was still from the place of his perception behind the, speakerphone situation in the pods. Now he's seen the way you were acting as you were putting the screws to him. His memory was probably, and that's why he was apologizing as he's being dumped, that it was warmly being reciprocated the whole time. But when he watched it, it is very different.
Is that the same time when you came out and said, I heard that you were out tonight, so I'm just here to see you?
Yes.
Okay. That was the same night where you conveniently told me that you had feelings for me. A month
I
before
never
the
said that. I heard that you were out. You and I have never cleared the air.
Okay. Is this more misunderstanding? Well, yeah, the fact that Mason, and maybe Mason with a bit more time, because I'm thinking that he's right on the heels of watching the pod scenes, and that would be very, very alarming and hurtful and hard to watch. So maybe Mason would be able to word it differently, think about it differently in terms of, yeah, you pressured me, but I still said it, and I overextended myself, as I said in the pods. And, even though I'm not a fan of the way I was being pressured, it was still on me to not say at least that extreme, right? Now, he could argue that he was doing, because, there's this sort of, we have seen, or I have, so many different phrases that they use in the pods. And I think that it's natural to have these phrases in the different plateaus of commitment. If you think, the very first date, you're at this plateau and marriage is up here. It's like there's these kind of plateaus of, hey, you're on my short list. Hey, you're in my really short list. And hey, I think I might be falling for you. And hey, I love you. And hey, let's commit. And hey, I don't know why it's always hey, but yeah, but you get my point. And for us watching, there are other phrases that he could have used that would have been honest, that wouldn't have been communicating what he was communicating, because we've seen that, right? And he might not know how to word that. So he's saying committing, maybe he just doesn't understand like what that exactly is stating, right? That he is now stating that he is going to break up with everyone. It's hard to imagine using that word in any other context, but anyway, yeah.
I knew you and Meg started dating afterwards. I didn't want to step on your toes. So I came out and I said, yeah, I heard you were out, and I...
Oh, sorry. I'm reacting with it. So they're talking about how recently, it sounds like, they were out, maybe as the show was starting to get aired, or it was, scheduled to get aired or something, and so they were all getting together. It kind of sounds like that. And from Madison's perspective, what she's saying now is that if we match it up with what Mason was saying, is that she was interested in talking with him. She wasn't overtly anyway interested in getting with him. But, you could see that being on her mind, but she's claiming that wasn't where she was coming from. And then she really wanted to talk with him. And so he is like also excited about that because he hasn't watched the pod stuff. And then they get together because, she was the one that dumped him. And so she might have rethought about it and wanted to make nice with him. And it kind of sounds like that. And then they get together, and in the course of them talking and making nice, she says that she had a lot of feelings for him. And he interprets it as her hitting, or, it kind of sounds like it might be something like that. I mean, what's happening right now is that he's trying to implicate her. He's also on the heels of hearing either directly or hearing from Meg that Madison has been calling him manipulative. So he has reason to come out swinging on some level. So I think he's just trying to throw ammo at her to show that she's I don't know, just like not a good person.
I really wanted to talk to you. I felt like we could clear the air.
Okay.
And you apologized to me for doing that.
You are taking that out of context. I apologize.
I fear I'm not.
I apologize to you for not seeing your red flags and not addressing them. I chose
The switch
to
up
ignore
is
them.
crazy, Mason.
Just because
I don't know, but I tend to believe Madison's account because he did apologize in the pods. I didn't think that he needed to. I still stand by a lot of what I reacted to initially watching the breakup date between Madison and Mason. Madison's breaking up with him and just laying into him. I now understand where she was coming from. But even with that, and I said this in my second pass through, that it was a leap to assume that her interpretation was accurate, and also potentially a leap to revel or to criticize him and blast him. And also, I will say, the second time watching the breakup date, it wasn't as bad as I remembered it being. But it was, she's breaking up with him basically the whole time. She's criticizing him while he's groveling and saying, oh, it's all my fault. It's like, what? Anyway, so prior to watching the pod episodes, which it sounds like this is that party, they would still be in the same place. And whereas Madison would have perhaps either legitimately calmed down a little bit, or was strategically thinking, well, if there's one person that's going to be angry at me, it's going to be Mason because I broke up with him, because Alex broke up with me. And so maybe it's better for me if I can get him to be on my side, at least to some extent, so that, and people on this show will say like that's manipulative or something. If there's any legitimacy to that action from someone in Madison's shoes, I would say it's very wise to be that way because the internet and the public are assholes. And so you got to do everything you can to avoid being attacked and ridiculed and canceled and forever labeled something. So, anyway. I tend to believe Madison that he did still feel sorry, and he apologized in the midst of a lot of things that were said. And for him to just turn it around, no, I apologized to you for, do we believe, so I'll rewind it, but he's saying, no, I didn't apologize. I apologize for falling for your bullshit is essentially what he's saying. And can we see Mason doing that? One, two, if he did, wouldn't we be hearing a much different story about this meetup? You see what I'm saying? I don't know. Maybe they're remembering differently.
I apologize.
I fear I'm not.
I apologize to you for not seeing your red flags and not addressing them. I chose
The switch
to
up
ignore
is
them.
crazy, Mason.
Just because
I'm trying to see a scenario where what he's saying could be true in his perspective. I apologize for not seeing your red flags. Could this just be another misunderstanding, right? Or misunderstanding matched up with like very bad self-awareness and bad communication or not clear communication. So from Madison's perspective, he apologized again for committing and pulling it back. Or what he said in the pods was he was pressuring her, which is interesting to remember that part, right? Because she wasn't committing to him. I've been over this already, but he, so he's apologizing, and might he have been apologizing for both? Might he have been apologizing for, yeah, I'm sorry for pressuring you, but also upon reflection, or I've heard some things, from Alex and whatnot that I wasn't paying attention to, and I regret not having seen those things. In his mind, this is Mason remembering what he said to Madison, and it was much more diplomatic. It was something like, yeah, I'm also realizing that I should have paid attention to more things, and I'm regretting that. I should have cut things off with you earlier and fully dedicated myself to Meg. I really regret that. And he believes that he didn't apologize for the original thing. He's apologized. You know what I'm saying? Like, I wouldn't be surprised if it was something like that. Or I suppose one of them is just completely lying, which is possible.
Because I take full accountability of myself ruining it with Meg does not disqualify all the things that you did and your role that got me to the point where I got.
Am I not the one who has a right to be mad here? I'm the one who got screwed over by both of you.
Yeah, not on purpose, I don't think. I think Madison neglected to be careful. So you could argue that that's volitional. You can make a choice to not be careful. That's the pods. It's hard. And I think that, yeah, it's her way. I think Madison is used to being alone and doing things on her own. Even what we know very little about her history is to up and move to a whole other country, right? Across the globe, from the States to, I believe, France, and then was it Jordan? And I'm guessing that she's just very accustomed to being on her own and just not getting involved with other people. And as she was going through what anyone would describe as, difficult to navigate, she just did it completely in her own head, didn't even really involve Mason in what she was doing, and that for Meg to feel manipulated, particularly since Meg at some point is like, actually, maybe he's not such a bad guy, and we're going to date after the pods, and actually, he's a great guy. We're not working out as a couple, but because it sounds like they're still really good friends to this day, so they've been friends. So from Meg's perspective, she's like, what in the world was Madison? And now watching her put the screws to him and hearing what Mason, would Meg be upset, and would it be tempting to conclude that Madison is the manipulator? Yeah, I can see it.
So if you never wanted to be with Mason, I knew Alex was your number one the entire time because another girl told me, why are you so upset about this and coming for Mason, when you had no intentions of being with him, when your number one was Alex and you told Mason?
Yeah, these are good questions. And I have faith that Madison could say something that I could relate to. But I think for Madison, it's a couple of reasons. One is that it was her perspective. It legitimately could have been seen that way from her very limited perspective and amplified by her traumas. But also, I imagine she would try to defend herself, because by this point, the floodgates of hatred and bullying is already occurring. And I don't have data on this, but everyone experiences this on the show, even the liked individuals. Like I administer this survey, this poll to everyone, you people, deserving listeners. I'll post it on the YouTube channel and ask people who you like and dislike. And every person will have some people liking them and some people not liking, some people hating them. Even the beloved people, like this season, I'm trying to remember mid-season, like Taylor or Virginia. I can't remember who was beloved by it. Monica, probably Monica, was really liked by everyone, right? I think Joey and Monica were really liked midseason. And although it was almost universal, it wasn't universal. There were, a handful of people that hated these people. So it's, why did I get on that? That everyone, all cast members experience some level of hate and are probably experiencing some level of bullying, some people much more than others, right? And I think anecdotally, based on other experiences, the women on the show are probably getting so much more, and and the kind of bullying that they'll get will be much more biting and cutting and trying to get under the skin and blah, blah, blah. So Madison could also be motivated to defend herself, to try to demonstrate to the audience that she is not the bad guy. I'll also say that if Mason had just been more diplomatic from the very beginning of this conversation on the couch, I think Madison would not have brought up anything. It kind of looked like Madison was willing to just let bygones be bygones and let the diplomacy nice happen. But Mason and Meg were the ones that were, not horribly, and I think understandably, given their perspective, criticizing her. And then that's when she started to defend herself and go after him.
Hey, I'm with Alex.
I think it's really unfair for you to speak on my behalf and say that I didn't have genuine feelings for Mason, because I did. He was dating two people. I was dating two people. I'm so tired of women having to fall on the sword for things that men do every single day. It's exhausting to me. And you're just getting.
So, yeah, she had similar kinds. It doesn't have anything to do with gender, Madison. Everyone can be attacked. Like I said, women anecdotally are way more attacked, but that's her perspective. But yeah, I'll just say that.
Scot-free, you're getting off scot-free, and I'm sitting here taking all the flack. You're not taking.
That's funny. I never knew how to spell scot-free. Is that how you spell scot-free? Did you see how they spelled it in the subtitles? Is that how you spell scot-free? I would have spelled it SCOT. My dyslexia makes it hard for me to even spell things out. So I made an episode a while back about that I'm mildly dyslexic. I don't know to what degree. It's hard to measure these things, but I'm still discovering things. One of the things I didn't know when I recorded that episode, a few months ago, was I've always had a hard time spelling things out, even if I'm looking at the word, which I was. You saw me get kind of messed up in terms of just spelling Scott, like the name. That's what I thought it was. That's how I thought it was spelled, just Scott-free, the name Scott, and then free, not capitalized, but you don't say. Not only that, but when people spell things, in fact, I'm just kind of really realizing how often this would happen. If I'm a receptionist, because I've had a lot of different jobs in my youth, and if I were to say, okay, what's your name? And I'm jotting it down, and I'm like, how do you spell it? And universally, I always would have to tell people, can you slow down and say that again? Because I always wondered, why are people going so fast? But now I think I'm realizing that other people, when they have something spelled out to them really quickly, they can at least keep up or retain it and write it down. Anyway. So yeah, scot-free is spelled S-C-O-T. I almost screwed that up. Scott with only one T and then dash free. Never knew that. I can be as old as I am and having said scot-free, I don't know how many times, heard the phrase, heard the term, and I've never seen it in print. It's kind of weird, right? All right, well, that seems like a good place to pause for now. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.